What up, money buffs? I'm Ryan.
And I'm Jonah.
And you're tuned into the Cash Compound's 2 cents on the movie Margin Call. In this series, we rate the film on our money meter, let you know if it's financially fresh or a waste of your wallet.
Yeah, sometimes we might call it a bad bet for your Benjamins.
A miss for your money.
Junk for your Jeffersons. Yeah, this is where we, go over our thoughts on the movie, what key scenes that stood out, and whatever else we relate to.
We also take a look at the financial actions in the movie.
And we'll also let you know if the movie's even worth your time.
So silence your cell phones,
grab your popcorn,
sit back, and enjoy our video. This week we watched Margin Call. If you haven't seen it before, we want to let you know that this video will absolutely contain spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it first. And if you have, but it's been a while, we'll give you a brief summary before we jump in. Also, we know Hollywood plays fast and loose with the facts, so we may touch on things that were different in real life, but we're mainly going to be discussing things as they happen in the films.
Yeah. Margin Call follows an investment bank in 2008, right on the cusp of the housing market collapse. After a mass layoff, one of the low-ranking risk management analysts gets a thumb drive with information that leads him to believe their company has passed the threshold for risk in its investments 2 weeks ago, according to him, and expects the company to lose more money than it's worth.
The volatility levels are set using historic patterns, basically, and then stretching those patterns out another 10-15% roughly.
All right, so?
So we are starting to test those historic patterns.
When?
Today,
Tuesday.
Monday, last Friday and Wednesday.
Two Fridays ago.
All right, I get it.
He tells his superiors, and everyone discusses how to roll with the punches.
Margin Call came out in 2011. It has a 7.1 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it got an 87 from critics and a 74 from audiences.
The cast, however, is stacked. So it stars Kevin Spacey, Paul Bettany, Zachary Quinto, Demi Moore, and Jeremy Irons. Apparently, this movie was made on a $3 million budget and took less than 3 weeks to film.
Yeah, it was definitely a darker and seedier take on the 2008 economic crisis than the other one we reviewed, The Big Short. This film is bent on showing people as mostly villains, or at least selfish people who are part of the problem and are ultimately looking out for number one. So, Jonah, what stood out to you?
Yeah, so basically the first scene, like kind of right at the beginning, where 80% of the company is let go. So it starts out with the stress of the workplace.
Look, I run risk management. I don't really see how that's a natural place to start cutting jobs.
We hope you understand this is in no way personal. The majority of this floor is being let go today.
The strain the market is having on the company, even if they don't actually realize why yet, and the ruthlessness of Wall Street. People are useful until they're not. Everyone is expendable, no one is safe, or the ones who are safe are probably the most morally compromised people.
Agreed. So speaking of ruthless, what about that scene with Jeremy Irons and Demi Moore when he's telling her flat out she needs to be the scapegoat?
Yep.
He says, "I need a head." And Demi Moore wants to fight it, but like everyone else in this movie, she chooses money over the truth. It's easier to accept the buyout than to fight the tide. And you can tell that they would bury her if she did try to fight it in legal battles, reputation assassination, no holds barred.
Yeah, and then they go through basically another round of layoffs once the dust settles, which is brutal. It's just not the world that I personally want to be in.
Yeah, you can make a lot of money, but at what cost?
So, how much of the movie was true?
So it's based on the real 2007-2008 crisis, and it's loosely based on the Lehman Brothers, a real investment bank, though they never give the name of the company in the film. They don't even really give the crisis in the film. They don't. You know, it's mainly hinting and innuendo. The Lehman Brothers, they filed bankruptcy in 2008 because of how heavily invested they were in subprime mortgage loans.
Yeah, so a margin call, the name of the movie, is a sales operation carried out on a product that has dipped in value. So it's sold to regain assets to lessen the blow.
I got Lawrence and Merrill.
Where are we?
63 cents.
On what?
375 a mixed day.
Get him to 65 and hit it.
Are you kidding me? What is that? That's a $131 million loss on a single trade.
I understand. Hit it.
Subprime mortgage loans that are lumped into mortgage-backed securities is all about this movie, and that's what The Big Short was about too. So it keeps popping back up. Of course, it happened a little over 10 years ago, so it's still pretty fresh.
For those who don't know, the U.S. subprime mortgage crisis was a multinational financial crisis that occurred between 2007 and 2010. Contributed to the 2007-2008 global financial crisis. This led to an economic recession, millions of people losing their jobs, many businesses going bankrupt.
There's going to be considerable turmoil in the markets for the foreseeable future. And they believe it is better that this turmoil begin with us.
And of course, what is currently being called the 2023 banking crisis has the same culprit. Mortgage-backed securities and subprime mortgage loans have ultimately been the downfall of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, Silvergate Bank, and First Republic Bank.
Apparently, investment banks have learned very little since then.
I agree.
But what can we learn from this to put ourselves in a better position if when something like this happens again? In our opinion, private banking is an excellent way to regain control of your finances instead of handing it over to someone else where they do whatever craziness can happen with it.
Yeah, control is actually so really important to me. So when I was younger, I didn't think it was so much, honestly. But as I get older, I'm starting to realize that control might actually be more important to me than a lot of other features about finance. I mean, think about it for a second. Which would you rather have, okay? A 4% mortgage at the conventional bank with a normal set of rules and responsibilities. So you have to pay on time. If you don't, you get a late fee. You can't miss any payments because don't have a bad month or something because you'll run the risk of foreclosure. Oh, and of course, you got to do that for 15 or 30 years, no questions asked. Or would you rather have a 5% mortgage, but you own the note? You make payments when you want to. There's no late fees. You don't ever have to worry about foreclosure, and you get to set the length of those payments. Which one would you actually choose?
Let's be honest, that's a loaded question.
Sure.
But based on the profession that we have chosen, I would definitely say the second. That's why we got into private banking, control. We've been told to give up control of our money so someone else can do something that will grow it in the hopes of having enough when we get older. That's a lot of money leaving my pocket, making someone else rich. I obviously need to buy things, and I still have a conventional bank account, but I'm making the shift to be more self-sustaining.
I like your answer. I know a lot of people that would choose the opposite choice. They would hear 4% mortgage and 5% mortgage, and they would immediately choose 4% mortgage, legitimately just based on that annual interest rate, right? But I think that those folks aren't truly exercising their imagination when it comes to the possibilities and the opportunities that they would now have with that kind of control over a huge expense in their life. They also just, I'm guessing, assume that nothing bad ever happens to them, right? No job loss, no health problems. Most of the time when things like that happen, you could use a little break in some other financial areas, right? The folks that practice private banking, well, they can live their life knowing that they have that flexibility.
And freedom.
Yeah.
So when you're no longer subject to the banks, you're truly free to make your own decisions. This is one of the benefits of the infinite banking concept that we think is priceless. Even if you've never thought of yourself as someone who would ever run a business, exploring infinite banking and treating your finances as if it were a business can be one of the smartest decisions you can make.
Another thing that Margin Call warns us about is excessive risk. The risk is what caused so many of these companies to dig a hole for themselves that they couldn't get out of. With private banking, you have a guaranteed contract that shows how your money will grow over time. It's not a handshake, it's not an IOU, it's not an investment, it's guaranteed growth that you can count on.
Okay, so now it's time to rate the movie on our money meter. It's the moment of truth, so buckle your seatbelts.
For me, the movie is taking a bad bones rating, and here's why. Number one, I didn't personally love the movie. If you are not familiar with what happened in 2008, I personally think you're gonna be lost in this movie. At no point do they just come out and say what's going on. Not in side conversations between characters, not posted on the whiteboard somewhere, nothing. And number two, I didn't appreciate the business dealings of the firm, right? They knew they would screw people over by selling these securities that they had, and they did it anyway. I think that's bad business, and so it gets bad bones.
Same for me. If I hadn't watched The Big Short recently, like you were saying, I would have been completely lost. So I appreciated how The Big Short tried to get you up to speed with what was going on. Margin Call, it treats the economic crisis almost like a horror monster. Like, we can't show this to you, so we're just going to talk about it and have, it lurking in the shadows, and you're supposed to be terrified, and it just didn't work for me. So, and also, all these people are awful, and it makes me want out of that world that much more.
Yeah. So, what do you recommend instead?
Well, if you're nervous about banks' involvement in your life, if you like the idea of having more control of your money and having the freedom to finance your own purchases, set your own repayment schedules, and more, I'd recommend you give the infinite banking concept a try.
That's all from us. We hope this helped you determine whether or not you'll use your time to watch Margin Call.
We want to know in the comments if you're implementing a financial strategy that matches Margin Call, or if you agree with us and are moving in a different direction.
Yeah. And if you have a movie that you'd like us to break down next, leave that in the comments as well.
From all of us here at the Cash Compound, we'll catch you next time as we give our 2 cents on another Hollywood classic. What up, mummy buffs? What up, money buffs? What up, money buffs? I'm Ryan.
And I'm Jonah.
And we are...
Struggling.